And we are back with I'll just call it Jitoc because it's too long of a full committee name. It's 2:00 and we're here to hear a legislative IT update from Kevin Moore. I think you know all of us and you've met all of us.
I do.
If not,
I'll introduce myself for the record. Kevin Moore, Director of IT for the General Assembly. Providing a general IT update today, but happy to answer questions along the way. If you would like additional information, I'm happy to try to answer those as we sit here as well. Or as always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out anytime. We're an open book. Happy to have the conversations. With that, I did prepare a memo to kind of guide my discussion today. What we are building off of is the presentation that we gave in House Energy, Digital Infrastructure. It's a new name for me, so I keep going back to it. And then Senate institutions as well. So we provided a brief on our cybersecurity security posture at that point in time. And I'm going to build off that a little bit and talk about some of the project work we've done since that time frame. One of the big things you all might be noticing now is our beginning to transition to a new email domain. So vtleg.gov. We are currently everybody was on a leg.state.vt.us email domain. It's a mouthful to try to get somebody to understand and write down. And we have erroneous email addresses that pop up all the time. Hey, I can't send it. I can't do this. What's going on? We, Legislative IT, actually recommended a transition to vtleg.gov back in about 2015. At that point in time, the organization as a whole was very paper-centric at that point, and had a lot of notary stuff and just stationery and paper products that they didn't want to get rid of. They wanted to use. There was a lot that was backstock. So the general sentiment at that point in time is, we understand your argument. We're not ready to do it yet. Since then, virtually every year, the calls to move on from the .us domain have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, particularly when we went to legislature.vermont.gov for our website. It was no longer connected. It didn't feel the same as that .gov domain. So we have begun that migration. All of the staff have moved over to that at this point in time. You can still use their old email address for the next 3 years to email them. So we don't have to worry too much about bookmarks or address books outside of our environment. Those will naturally update over time, and we will continue to receive those emails from anybody during the next 3 years while we're making this transition. Beyond that, all new staff that are coming in are going to be issued the vtleg.gov address initially. And then in the background, we're still going to maintain all the aliases to make sure that no matter what, even if we don't give it to that new staff member, that they can indeed receive email, even using the old email domain paradigm. We are in the beginning stages of migrating legislators. We have one legislator that wanted to jump on early. So we said, hey, you're the first one. Let's make sure we understand what all the systems look like. They're willing to take that risk early on. Again, it's not much of a risk for them, but we haven't officially rolled that out to legislators yet. We plan on doing so over the coming weeks and months to get folks transitioned over to it. Come new member orientation timeframe, which is a year from now, but it'll be here before we know it. We'll begin issuing new legislators the vtleg.gov email address at that point in time. And again, maintaining for 2 years at that point, the old leg.state.vt.us email domain. So that's a big transition. The website's not changing. I want to emphasize that. That's the one that comes to me all the time. It is still going to remain legislature.vermont.gov. It will not change. vtleg.gov will redirect you to our primary website URL. Any questions on that before I move on? Pretty straightforward, but impactful. Windows 11. We've all heard that Windows 10 is end of life coming pretty soon. We're in the transitions of migrating everybody over to Windows 11. We expect that to happen again within the coming weeks. Not a huge shift. There's a couple of small visuals there, but we're using this as an opportunity to package a couple of our other updates, which I'll talk about going further down the list, just for ease of transition for folks. Data center migration. This is something that we've been wanting for a good long while too. We finally have moved all of our data operations to our new data center. They're there, it's operating. It's a much better environment as far as environmental controls go, as far as electrical redundancy goes, data redundancy. I'm missing something here. future growth in data systems management. It's not a huge space, but it allows us to grow. Allows us to grow a little bit and anticipate some of the demands of the institution as a whole.
Flood resilience.
Flood resilient, yes, absolutely. We are above floodplain. We're actually getting out of the basement of the State House, which arguably is above floodplain, but not above groundwater problems that we were having coming off the hill. So yes, we are above floodplain. We are in the Montpelier Capital Complex area, so we can still be co-located with our data. We know that Vermont, while we are getting better with ISP resiliency, it's not perfect yet. And this organization, no matter what, has to function. We found that out several times when we had geographical outages, we still functioned. And that's something that is critical to this institution. We want to be close enough to be able to do that. Next page.
System redundancies. So if you lose a complex for whatever reason, you still have.
We have the ability at this point in time to shift our load back to another data center location if we need to. We do not operate out of cloud environments for everything. We do hosted solutions, certainly, but we don't have a cloud hosted data center, if that makes sense. So lots of resiliency built into our existing hardware and physical infrastructure, lots of resiliency in the software platforms and applications as well. There's always a flaw. There's always a weakness. So I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it is light years away from where we were just a few months back. Any other questions on that before? Okay. We are beginning a new project with the Joint Fiscal Office. They are looking to revamp their website. It's more of a refresh than it is a complete rebuild. We're working with them in collaboration with a third-party designer. We don't retain a designer that's specialized in UX and UI, user experience and user interface design in our shop, on our team. So we're reaching out to other professionals out there. We've already met with JFO. We've already brought the designer in to meet with JFO. Everybody seems to be on the same page. It's a low-cost initiative. So we're going to continue working with them, build that contract out. We haven't built the contract out, so I don't want to say any kind of vendor names yet. Build that contract out, and then our target launch for a new site would be as soon as the end of next summer. We will be doing the vast majority of that coding and building of that new website in-house with existing staff and resources. The design work is what we're outsourcing. Legislative reports. Legislative reports is a huge application as far as what the requirements coming out of it are. It was poorly implemented about, 8 years ago. We had a retained vendor that worked in some what I would call legacy frameworks at this point. And it just was not flexible enough to meet the needs of the users, of the legislative staff using that application in order to report back to committees what reports have been received, what reports are being anticipated, and granular level details. The real big issue with that is that the data points weren't there. The database wasn't structured properly. It wasn't built properly. And so we wound up rebuilding the database, making sure we had the proper data points available, and then building a new front-end application using existing tools, existing staff time, and building it on an existing platform that we already had out to all of staff. We call it the intranet. It is what we like to call as our one-stop shop for virtually every application, depending on your role in the organization. We worked in very close collaboration with the attorneys and legislative council in order to make sure that we were meeting their needs. This was a flaw that they saw a couple of years ago. We didn't have the resources to assist at that point in time, so asked them for some time. We have since done so. They seem to be very happy with it. We are still doing some adjustments based off of their requirements. And as they learn the system and deal with exporting reports, but we can now do that in-house again versus having to retain a third party.
And Rep. James.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. So the work to upgrade the legislative reports function, that was done recently, like over the summer or something?
Correct, Rep. James. It was done over the summer. It was largely our web developer, Adam Wood, in collaboration with Katie McGlynn and a couple other folks over at the Legislative Council.
That is awesome. So it's going to be easy now for committee members to find out what reports are due to us, like what we should be anticipating, what the deadlines are, what's coming when?
That absolutely should be easier. Obviously, it depends on the amount of the quality of data put into the database. I will say that. So I know Katie McLean and other folks that work with that application are doing their absolute best to put the data in as granularly as possible, which will allow for better filtering and better report outs. So yes, you should absolutely get better data coming out of it, and it should be more accessible to the attorneys when they're trying to provide that for you.
Thanks.
Will that be available for the legislators, or is that simply staff?
It's a staff internal facing application at this point. We do have copies of reports submitted to the legislature on the website that's available. This is more about what's outstanding and the granularity surrounding that. Committee information pages. So we put a lot of content up on our website all day long. Multiple content creators, we'll call them. It's huge. The system we've had in place has been in place for, again, about 10 years. It was designed originally as a proof of concept, and it worked so well, it was held on to during that time frame. We have since taken it upon ourselves and worked with Community Services Supervisor Megan Canella in the back, along with other folks throughout the organization to say, what's working, what's not working well, what can we do differently? And we have since rebuilt that application. We're about 95% complete on that as well. Megan and her team will begin testing that in earnest over the next couple of weeks. We've done a couple of show and tells with it. Again, in-house built, in-house application, centralized. This is something that will provide us granular audit logs for any kind of changes that have happened to the committee information pages as far as content upload or taking it off. The ability for Megan to provide, or Megan's role, I should say, to provide for a substitute for a committee assistant. Everybody gets sick. Previously, we were locked in on who could upload content to each site based off of that individual, their name. Essentially, their username was attached to it. Now Megan can go through as an administrator of that system and assign substitutes on the fly without having to engage IT, which is great. In addition to that, we should be able to much more secure upload process at that point. That's the piece I want to touch on. We're using security, an encrypted protocol in order to transfer content to the website now, rather than the, again, proof of concept that we had previously. I'm sure you've heard the term, the W drive. I'm not sure if you've heard that. No, really?
Sure is.
The W drive? I'm surprised. Most committee assistants, when they hear that, they're kind of cringing at the same time. So this is going to be in that intranet facing application for our committee services folks. One-stop shop, make their lives a lot easier. And it'll give them access based off of their role. M Files. I can use this name out there because we've contracted with them. This is a new document management solution for the General Assembly as a whole. This is going to replace our longest serving document management solution, or application, I should say, longest serving application. It's been around better part of 30 years in various ways. It's not the same system it was 30 years ago. It's been acquired by multiple organizations over the years, and unfortunately, the manufacturer of the product now doesn't support it as well as they could. It feels like they're extracting money from it and not investing in it as well as they otherwise could. The product is fairly rigid as well. It doesn't allow for the type of collaboration we expect in modern platforms nowadays. Actually, let's just talk to Marie about it. Google Docs, where you can open a document and you have multiple editors in that document at the same time. That's not something we can do with our existing document management system. You have to close it out, make sure somebody else can open it up, and then it locks that until they put it back, which in its time was a great thing. Now, not as great. We have multiple attorneys working on the same thing. We have multiple staff working on the same thing. They need access to the same content at the same time in multiple locations, whether that's a mobile device, on a different web browser, a different system altogether, or from their office. This new platform will allow us to integrate with all of these more modern applications while still maintaining a document management solution. This product was selected by a stakeholder group built of about 12 different folks representing all offices of the General Assembly and all impacted users of that system. So we are very close. We expect to roll this out with Windows 11. Now, in the event that for whatever reason we don't hit that Windows 11, because that is a hard and fast for us, we need to get Windows 11 out the door. in the event that this document management solution isn't ready for prime time for whatever reason, whether user acceptance testing isn't done or there's a feature that isn't working as we expected, whatever the case may be, we have the ability to be fluid with the timeline. We have the existing document management solution in place. It's still working. It's still functional. We own it for another 9 months, about 9 months. That gets us all the way through session if we need to. The current solution can work in collaboration with, in parallel with the new solution if necessary. So we have flexibility in our rollout model. We have the ability to adjust, again, on the fly, in-house, if necessary. So we're really excited about this. It's been several years in the making. We started looking for a replacement for document management 2013, if I'm recalling the date correctly. At that point in time, there were just a handful of players out there in the market, and they were just too big for us. Cost too much, the implementation was too big, the technology behind it was just too much. So we kept our simple solution that was fairly rigid. We're excited to be moving on from it now. Turn around and look for hands. The Capitol Police Security Camera Project is another big initiative we've been working on since we've been in committee during session. This is a multi-year project that was delayed due to the flooding in 2023. That storage room was not above floodplain at that point in time. And all of the cameras, after they had been disassembled and their housings removed for paint match to comply with historical preservation requirements, flooded in July of 2023. So at that point in time, we took our inventory, we've gone through the FEMA process, we've gone through insurance processes, and we have since re-engaged. All of the cameras have been installed. They're all operational. The Capitol Police Department with the Sergeant at Arms worked through the policy and commissioning side of it now. So you'll see in here that we've been technical supports primarily for the Capitol Police and making sure that the products meet our organizational needs, but also making sure that the architecture, the integration, and configuration of everything is up to standard. That way, when we take this over fully from the vendor who's doing the integration work, we can maintain it and support it on behalf of the Capitol Police going forward. As far as where the cameras are, why the cameras are, what they're looking at, when they're looking at, what they do, I would defer those questions to the Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms. But this has been a pretty big effort for us. Okay. AV training and IT professional development. This happens all the time, but I figured I'd highlight it. One of the things that's pretty neat is our new audiovisual specialist that came on. We were able to get him into a couple of training classes this year that brings him to what's called a level 2 certification. It allows us to purchase equipment directly from manufacturers without having to go through a installer, reseller. This gives us a little bit more access to equipment. It allows us to get access to software that otherwise would be restricted because we don't have the certifications to access it, and allows us to do more things in-house as far as automation. So we don't do a ton of automation in committee rooms, but if you think about the chambers are a great example. The cameras that are sitting up there on the walls are all controlled by central touch panels. Those touch panels are controlled by software applications and controllers behind the scenes. That is what we're talking about. We're talking about AV automation, is being able to not only maintain those systems, but to expand those systems throughout the organization by demand, by request, and also replace them without necessarily having to depend on a specific manufacturer or vendor. So that's something we've been pretty excited about. In addition, we sent 3 of our staff to NAIL it, National Association of Legislative Information Technology. It's a subgroup of NCSL. They held their PDS in early September this year, early September. It's an opportunity for our staff to not only go and hear about what the emerging technology trends are or demands across the IT industry, the legislative IT industry, as we could try to call it. It's not only that, but it's also to network with their peers in other states. Most legislative IT operations are fairly small in comparison to the executive branch or judiciary operations. As such, we all have to share how we've tackled unique problems. What are we doing in order to address something different? And it's enlightening every single time we go. We're one of the smallest states. We're one of the smallest staffs. every single time I've gone, I've observed where Vermont has been able to offer something of value to another state that's larger, has a larger staff. We are able to do things with finesse in ways that other states have to do with brute force. Purely because of the number of users, number of applications, or number of systems. So when we're able to share some of how we did something, it directly benefits other state legislatures, which is great, but we've also done the same in return. Our Office 365 instance, I've mentioned this before, we were one of the earliest adopters among state legislatures of Microsoft Office 365. That was back when it was a fairly new offering and it had the commercial cloud only. But the reason that we did that was based off of the successes of the Virginia House. And the Virginia Senate at that point went to a G Suite option. And so we saw the pros and cons and we were able to compare in real time and talk to the people who not only implemented it, but had to manage it on the day to day and say, what's working well and what's not working well. It's more than just the cost of a product. It's the time, it's the effort, it's the uptime. It's how easy is it to use or integrate into other systems. It all matters. And so having that peer connection, being able to pick up the phone or jump on a Teams message chain with a peer that's across the nation is invaluable. And so sending folks to that PDS was, again, us reaching out, networking, learning more about emerging trends, and making sure that we are indeed on top of things. Soft phone services. It's no secret. Our workforce population is very mobile now, very, very mobile since the pandemic. One of the things we did early on in the pandemic was issue hardware-based phones to people at home. So that's what we had for an option. We wanted to make sure people were able to communicate back and forth in their home offices while working remotely. We have been waiting eagerly the ability to extend our existing telephony system at no additional cost again to our soft phones, software-based telephones on the laptop, issued devices, whether it's iPad, laptop, or by convenience, it's a choice of the user, it's not a requirement. If they want to have it on their mobile device, a personal mobile device, because we don't issue those. So Android phone, Apple phone, whatever that is, we can do that as well. It extends their office phone number directly to those devices. So we're not putting another phone number out there. We're not paying for another phone service. The application comes with the existing service fees that we already have with our telephone system. So this is just an extension of it. And this has been received pretty well. We have maybe 10% of our staff using it right now because we're in the early stages of getting it rolled out, but it will be installed on every single issued device going forward. Apologies. Working right now. The intent is to make it available if somebody wants it, not to make it available just start ringing during committees or whatever. So it's just to make it available if somebody wants it because it's no additional cost. Some people like the idea, some people don't. Some people still want to pick up their cell phone and just use their cell phone. That's fine.
When you say users, that's just staff.
Staff users, I apologize. But here's the benefit of it. And so once we get through this project, we should be able to extend this to legislators. No additional cost for the actual software. There will be an additional cost per phone number that we would get and acquire. So this is an effort that we have been looking at for a while, is to issue legislators a legislative phone number. Yes. Can receive phone calls and make phone calls. And again, we're using what we have in our inventory to make this work. So it would be installed on the iPad by default. You would have to put a set of headphones on to make it a private conversation at this point, or you could choose to have it on a personal mobile device for convenience purposes. So the intent is to do precisely that, but this has been a multi-year effort to get there as well. It's transitioned from our old POTS system to our new VoIP system, reduced our cost of telephony by about 50%, and makes it so we can start within the same budget issuing those phone numbers to legislators, hopefully by next summer is what we're looking for. So pretty excited about that one as well.
We'll have an office.
So that one, it seems super simple, but the accessibility of that is huge. It's absolutely huge. Being able to just pick up the phone and call somebody and actually get them, not get their voicemail away from the check it, call back. It's huge. Cybersecurity operational continuity is the next area I want to talk about. we have one of our staff members who's being called up for military duty this next calendar year. Very important member of our staff. All of them are. This is a back-end person. With that, we don't expect to have that position filled for a year. It's hard to just pick somebody off the street and backfill a super technical role like that. So what we are intending on doing, what we've already done is validated and updated our standard operating procedures, our SOPs, to make sure that anything within that role, should we have a question, we can refer to documentation in their absence, or we can go through and leverage existing contracted services. It's a T&M contract, retainer contract with similar professionals in industry. It's a state retainer, pretty easy to get to. With that, we do anticipate distributing some of that workload internal to other staff for that short duration. It'll put a little bit of additional pressure on us as a staff, but we look at it as an opportunity to understand that position a little bit better and to do some cross training and make sure that we, as a collective staff, are able to fill that need in their absence.
I have a cyber question, which I like to ask the administration, but I don't know that I've asked you, Kevin. So in the event of a big cyber event, one of the questions that I have been asking for years and years and years is, when is the speaker notified? Speaker's in kind of succession.
Mhm.
And I have not gotten an answer to that question, except it's, when the administration thinks that that's when it's a good time. And that does not seem like the right answer to me. And I don't actually know what the right answer is. And, I've gotten some assurances from Secretary Riley Hughes that she understands that. But, when would you notify the speaker? When are you notified?
So obviously, I can't speak to the other branches. I can
Yeah.
tell you what happens in our case. I'm usually one of the first persons notified at this point in time because of the way our systems work. I get early communications, and if I don't receive them directly, somebody from my staff receives them, and I'm one of the first calls regardless.
Mhm.
The speaker is notified as soon as I know that there is something going on with our system that could have a negative impact, period. So if there is a known security breach, knocking on wood here, if there's a known security breach, she would be notified along with President Pro Tem immediately. I notify both offices at the same time. In addition to that, if we have a significant concern that could impact the reputation of the organization, or that there could be a press inquiry surrounding it, we make sure that the speaker's office is notified. And then we are able to provide, Speaker and Pro Tem office is notified. We're able to provide them with the technical information they need in order to respond completely. I can give you a for example. For example, we all might be aware of that SharePoint breach that happened a few months ago. We were an unaffected organization. With that said, I did speak to the chiefs of staff. I said, we are unaffected. This is great, right? Great news. We don't have to worry about this. That said, legislators, I didn't communicate directly with, because I don't typically. Those legislators reached out and said, hey, are we impacted? This is a concern. I saw this on the news, a variety of different folks. And they said, are you going to send out a mass notice? I am happy to do so whenever it is deemed worthwhile. My concern is I don't ever want my emails to be so frequent that they start becoming a bothersome nuisance where they get ignored. And so if I send out an email, generally speaking, it is important. I'll preface it with important. I'll preface it with whatever that notification is, make sure that it is widely known. The speaker was notified as soon as we know, or the speaker's office, I should say, was notified as soon as we knew. And so that was Monday morning. We went through the breach was discovered in the industry, I believe, on a Saturday morning. We did an evaluation come Monday because we were fairly certain at that point that we weren't impacted. We did a deeper dive on Monday, checked on all of it, and reported to the Pro Tem's office and the Speaker's office that, hey, really nothing to see here. Things are fine. But we continued the communication until everybody was okay. It came through a couple of times. And we just continue talking. So it's a
That's-
long-winded
Yeah.
way of saying that it's probably similar to what the other branches are saying. Once we know there's a confirmed impact that's negative, we reach out. Once we know that there's a confirmed potential reputational hit to the institution, we reach out. So anytime data is potentially negatively impacted, access to resources is negatively impacted, those emails come out fast. Those communications come out fast. I'll call the speaker directly if I need to.
And why does that happen? Is it just your good judgment, or is there some process or procedure or in place?
There is not a documented procedure on what that trigger is at this point. I will say that every speaker that I have worked with since I've been here has a different preference on what that threshold is. So I am happy to explore. If there's a desire to have a trigger, we can certainly put that in place. Our trigger is there an impact to data or systems? Is there an impact to reputation? As soon as those are hit, we send out notifications.
For the state, for the legislature.
For the legislature.
System. I mean, my question to the administration is, of course, bigger question about
Yes,
the state and, yeah.
And so, yes, I'm talking
Thanks.
legislative IT operations specifically. This next piece is fantastic. It's a great segue. Managed security operations. This is precisely why. So we have, again, we're a small staff. We have small, limited amount of resources. We have I actually just signed the purchase order today. We have just selected a vendor to partner with for managed security operations. This has been something, again, we've been looking for years. It is dramatically less expensive than hiring dedicated security professionals on staff, which is fantastic. But what it allows us to do is leverage an entire team of security professionals as a service with a nationwide leader. I'm not willing to throw the name out there quite yet. I'm happy to do so off the record. We're not finished our contracting process yet. They're going to provide managed detection and response. They're going to do proactive threat hunting. They're going to go through and help with incident response. They're going to go through and provide for 24/7 monitoring from a SOC, Security Operations Center. That's something that we don't have currently. That's something that we want, but we've been too small to get access to. And so this is huge. This is a huge value add for not just our team, but the organization as a whole. The implementation timeframe, I don't want to say is imminent, but it's very close. We're going to start looking towards implementation in the next handful of weeks. Make sure that we can get systems operational before session and start getting good data in. Happy to answer questions. I'm beating around the bush a little bit because we're not fully there yet.
Who in the legislature works with you on that? Or is that a you thing on your own?
I guess I would ask for a little bit more on the question.
So, we've asked about oversight of the administration. So I don't think this is necessarily an oversight question, but who in the legislature are you working with on this? Like, who decided that was the thing to do? Who will you kind of report? Is it the joint?
It's Joint Legislative Management Committee is our oversight entity, and we are advised by this committee, of course.
Yep.
So as far as the Security Operations Center as a service conversation, it's been an ongoing conversation for years. We've had bits and pieces of it in our budget or proposed budget over the years or have tried to add it and it was too expensive, typically too expensive for us to go after. But it's usually part of our budget request and we can break it down granularly during that process before Joint Legislative Management approves it, before we go through the standard appropriation process.
Perfect.
And then we acquired one other product recently that is allowing us to do enhanced cybersecurity awareness training. I know there are at least two of you in this room that have sent me various scam-looking emails over the last little bit. Usually you hear a response from me pretty quick. You did not this time. That was intentional because we were phishing legislators and such using a new system. We're trying it out. So I apologize for some radio silence there. Usually you get a response from me pretty quickly. But we are trying. Not everybody passed. But anyway, so what this is allowing us to do is to do more granular targeted phishing simulations compared to what we had. It was a pretty rigid, I'll say again, system that came with one of our other solutions. It's a freeware essentially that comes with one of our existing solutions. And while it was helpful and while it got us moving in the right direction as a cybersecurity awareness culture, which was fantastic, it wasn't giving us enough of a challenge for some of our power users. It wasn't training people at their level. It was just the same content across the board. So with this new platform, we are able to target individual users based off of their understanding and previous responses to other targeting campaigns to make sure that they're being challenged at their level.
So some of us just leveled up.
As individuals pass or fail, we get metrics back. We're able to report that to supervisors if they're staff or to individual legislators if they're legislators. And we're able to provide specific training and response to that campaign. So if it's a phishing campaign, for example, and somebody is to click on the link, we're able to send automatically a training video for that to help that legislator or staff member going forward.
Is this using AI?
I don't believe it's using AI. It's machine learning at this point in the background when it comes to analyzing the responses. I don't have a specific answer. It's a hosted solutions, industry known. Again, happy to name drop off the record here. We could certainly do that. I don't know. Let me get back to you on that.
I very specifically would like an answer to that question.
Absolutely.
Not that it's good or bad, but we should know.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Going forward, we are focusing on finalizing these projects, excuse me. VTLake.gov domain, we're going to start sending out notices. You'll see we're going to start reaching out and saying, hey, we want to migrate folks over. There are inevitably going to be some legislators who don't want to move yet, whether that's stationary purposes or whatever. That's fine. We'll put that email address as an alias in the background quietly, and when they're ready to move to it, we'll let them move to it. We are completing the Windows 11 rollout. That'll be done by the end of, I guess, technically next calendar month, October, as our intent. We are looking at supporting the Joint Fiscal Office's website redesign efforts, obviously, as I mentioned previously, and then launching and likely responding to a couple of tweak adjustments to the committee information page upload process. Separate from that, we are going to be onboarding our managed security operations provider and making sure that we are able to get good data out of that, actionable data, free up staff time. Again, we are losing a technical staff member in the calendar year. So this is a convenient timing for that force multiplier for our team.
And when we move the email addresses, I like to explain a lot of things to my constituents that are happening. I mean, can you give us some information as to why we're doing that?
A handful.
Because we're gonna have to tell them,
Yes.
we're gonna have to tell them, hey, our email address is changing.
So
Here's why.
there's a handful of reasons behind it. There is an argument to be made about the .us domain being secure or not secure. I could probably argue either direction, frankly. But we want to take that out of it, right? So that's the first piece. There's an argument to be made about security. The .us domain is accessible to general people on the internet to create a .us domain. The .gov platform is not. You have to apply for it. It's restricted. We had to go through and make our case, and then we were issued that. Again, no cost at that point in time. Ease of communications. Again, how many times have you been on the phone with a constituent trying to speak your email address, right? leg.state.bt, no L, no V, no, it's not C. It's tough. That's always been a challenge. And we get constant feedback on that about our domain. Another piece is that as we start moving into some more shared services, we need to do email federation. So think Workday project. We're going to be federating.
I don't know what federating means.
We'll be connecting our access control solution to the Workday product in order to allow our legislative staff who have access and authorization to be there to gain access to that system and work within it. Human resources information system type of team. So that's a big part of it. I lost my other train of thought. I apologize. There's a handful of pieces there. Ease of access, .gov, right? .gov symbolizes we're a government institution. We absolutely should have a .gov domain. It is hard to communicate right now. Our existing email addresses. And we get to keep the existing email addresses for a long duration to help transition.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you, Kevin. We're past our time.
I'm sorry.
Actually went longer than a half an hour. No, that's fantastic. Didn't have a lot of questions for you. So every time I've seen you testify, there haven't been a lot of like burning questions for you. I think that's a good thing.
I hope it's a good thing. Again, open book, ready to answer questions. I will send you an email for your specific question shortly.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
And I believe the AI Council walked in. So when you all are ready, come on up. All right. Great. So.
Did you all get the slides we sent over last night? Okay, we can throw them on screen as well, but want to make those come through.
Great. And so I haven't met you folks, so I'll do the introduction. We can start with Senator Brock.
Oh,
Introduction. Mute.
Yeah, sorry.
It's Senator Randy Brock. I represent Franklin County and Northern Grand Isle County.
And Rep. James, if you can go.
Yep, I'm Representative Kathleen James. I represent the Bennington 4 District, Chair of House Energy and Digital Infrastructure.
Mr. Billy.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham too. Representative Orange too.
Senator Weeks.
Senator Dave Weeks, representing Rutland County.
And I'm Rob Plunkett, Senator from the Bennington County. And we have Susanna Davis online, if you can go.
Hi, good afternoon. Susanna Davis, Executive Director of Racial Equity and Chair of the AI Council.
And I'm Josiah Raish. I'm the Chief Data and AI Officer for the state, and I'm the ADS representative on the AI Council.
And we do have a large council here. I'm going to skip over you folks and Secretary Denise Rowland.
Yes. Secretary Riley Hughes, with the Agency of Digital Services.
John Kelly, Chief Staff ADS. Sean Naylor, ANC Digital Services.
Great. And thank you for all of that. So anyone watching this will know who we are. So the floor is yours. Take it away. However, you all were planning to present.
Okay, I got the Zoom link, so let me get that fired up and then I'll share and see how fast the computers can go today. Success. Great. Cool. So thank you for having us. As I've already said, I'm Josiah Raish and Susanna is the chair of the council who will be driving most of the presentation today. So Susanna, I'll toss it over to you.
All right, thank you. So we are going to begin by giving you all a bit of the history of the AI Advisory Council. We'll talk about its composition. We'll talk a little bit about the council's goals, what we've been working on, what we hope to be working on, and then we'll identify some open questions or areas of opportunity that you all may be interested to take a look at as you continue your pre-session and then session meetings. So I'll begin with the history of the AI Council. You'll see on the timeline ahead of you that in 2018, there was an act that created the AI task force. And then about 2 years later, the AI task force issued a final report that had a number of recommendations in it, including continued study and continued work on the topic. Already at that time, AI was clear to be a really integral part of people's lives, and therefore state government knew that it needed to understand it and recognize its strengths and risks. So another couple of years after that, the AI division, the AI council, the code of ethics, and the inventory all emerged. We have also the AI Center for Enablement, which was happening in the division level. And I'll actually pause here because the way that this is set up for you visually, you'll see that the top line items in the black font are all things that were happening in and around the AI Council and its predecessor, the task force. And then the items in green below it are things that are happening in parallel by the AI division. So there's really very much a synchronicity that's happening between the council and at the staff level happening within ADS. So at the time that the division and the council and the code of ethics and the inventory are coming online, we also have the AI Center for Enablement happening at the division level. Another year later, of course, you'll see from the council that we put out a data management policy and some guidelines on how to safely, responsibly, and effectively roll out AI in state government use. And then, of course, at the same time, at the division, they were doing generative AI user training. So not just creating guidance around how and when it should be used, but also actually getting people trained so that they develop familiarity with some of the tools that the people we serve are already becoming familiar with. And then last year, you'll see that in our report, we raised some questions about the council's scope and some possibilities around the creation of a data and AI office. And then, of course, along the same time, so to speak, there was the launch of ChatVT, which is an in-house program that is used similar to a ChatGPT, for example, but it's designed to be inward focused for state employee use, which has its own sort of security benefits. And as far as we understand, and Josiah, you can correct me, but I think you said it was upwards of 500 users. Tell me what it is, because I'm going to get it wrong.
Yeah. So we've got at this point about 500 users active every week from state employees, which is really good adoption compared to what other states are seeing with their generative AI pilots.
Great, thank you. So the current composition of the AI Council is we have a chairperson who happens to be me right now. And we also are being largely led by the subject matter experts. Chief among them is Josiah. We've got representatives from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And I will add that the rep from ACCD also was a member of the original AI task force from years ago. So she and a number of others who are on today's council bring with them that history and that background knowledge, which has been very useful. We've got representatives from Homeland Security, or the Homeland Security reps from the Department of Public Safety. We have folks from VDH, from the Supreme Court. Currently that seat is vacant, but it is held for the Supreme Court. We have representatives from the Attorney General. We have people from academia. We have representatives from civil liberties organizations like the ACLU. And we have a gubernatorial appointee from the NUARI. Please don't ask me what that stands for, but it's important. And we're going to come back a little bit later in our presentation to discuss how this composition may look in the future, if you all are interested in that discussion. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about the impacts that we've had as a council. And in order to do that, I'd like to start by telling you how we view AI. So in general, the council's approach to AI is to recognize it as a power tool, in a sense, right? It is a tool, it is a resource. It in itself is not an end goal, but it is something that we can use to make state government service better. And so we believe as a council that AI systems should be used in a human-centered way that recognize the dignity and value of all persons and their contributions to society. And I know that for some that may sound like flowery language, but it's tremendously important because there are so many ways in which bias and other pitfalls can creep into the use of AI, especially when it's done by large institutions like a state government. And so by having this approach that grounds us in the recognition that the machine is the tool and the people are the goal is really important for the council. So we see AI as a power tool that's used by people within what's referred to as a socio-technical process. And the idea here is that we want to make sure that we're doing good and that it's serving the interests and the aims of state government. And we take that really seriously, not just the interests and aims of our cluster of agencies on the council, but state government broadly, which includes recognizing what are the goals and aims of all of the branches of state government and figuring out whether and to what extent AI may be able to be used safely and responsibly and efficiently to do that. So to that end, you'll remember that we had a number of deliverables that we shared. We talked a little bit about this in the timeline. So in 2023, we cast a vision for a code of ethics that state government could adopt to ensure that we focused on that human-centered use of AI. And that code of ethics included a framework for what constitutes appropriate or inappropriate use of AI systems. It also laid out some of the characteristics of what makes a good AI system and some of the things that are important to consider when you're assessing outcomes of use of AI systems. Last year, we all put out AI implementation and data management. So we put forward a protocol for how to measure and assess impact, how to manage risk, and a few other, internet connection unstable. I apologize if I get choppy, and a few other mitigation techniques, as well as a plan how you can monitor ongoing use. There's also a standard notice of usage that we put forward, and some very interesting and very helpful visualizations about circumstances in which it's appropriate to use AI and not appropriate, and then how to notify the public in an effort to be really transparent. We also had some generative AI dabbling that we did. We created an acceptable use standard for state employees, including things like when and how to use AI to deploy translated messages in times of emergencies. We're still working on that. That was done with input from a number of sources, including community groups that are focused on translation and interpretation, the Office of Racial Equity, and others. But this employee use of generative AI did allow for a little bit more of a widespread adoption by state employees. But again, we really want to make sure that we all don't get a little too recognizing that this is an idiom steeped in violence, but we don't want to be too trigger happy when it comes to the use and deployment of AI. So we're really trying to create systems that help guide state employees about how to do so in a way that's measured and responsible. And then, of course, this year, what you have / will see from us are some recommendations on the future of the council. So we have in mind an expansion of the outward-facing role of the council. We feel pretty ready to more. And again, we'll get to this later in the discussion, but we'd like to invite you all to consider some of the changes that may end up making the council more able to provide guidance, not just internally, but also externally.
So as Susanna said, that power tool analogy we find really helpful because a good power tool helps you zoom out from the mechanics of whatever task you're doing and think about the outcome. So if you're, swinging a hammer and avoiding hitting your thumb, you're thinking about avoiding hitting your thumb. If you're using a brad nailer or another, some sort of a power tool, you're thinking about how does that corner come together? How does, whatever the thing you're building, how does that look? What's the outcome look like? And so that's kind of the same metaphor we're trying to apply to how AI is adopted within state government. So just wanted to hit some of the highlights of our work over the last few years. We've had our initial wave was 300 employees trained as kind of AI change agents We worked with Justin Kenny's Performance Improvement Network to train a bunch of folks in how could they think about how their processes could be reimagined to work with AI. At this point, like I said, we have upwards of 500 employees using ChatGPT on a weekly basis. There's lots of AI pilots going on. I don't actually have the exact number right now because people keep coming every week with new ideas of could we use AI to make this work better for Vermonters or reduce the kind of overhead of a process. And we're also working with Agency of Transportation, Liquor and Lottery, and Education and Department of Labor to develop AI leads in each of those agencies to think about what the future of their work looks like, taking advantage of the capabilities AI offers around efficiency and better outcomes for Vermonters. Currently, we've brought in a new AI director, which was the role that I held previously. And he's focused on the technical implementation within state government. Sometime I'll bring him in and introduce him to you all. His name is Miles. But he's working on our next generation capabilities. So we've been talking about AI as really being an enabler for state employees to do their work more effectively. So if you can imagine a lot of workflows that I do, and I'm sure a lot of you have as well, is like grab information from this system, reformat it, enter it into some other system or upload it into some other system. And instead of having that kind of manual workflow, there's a new set of technologies that allows you to use a chatbot and ask it a question like, what are all the tasks I have to do today? Or what are all the outstanding invoices I have to review? It can go grab those, format them for you in a way that's consumable for you. You can work on them and then say, now upload these into the system, mark them as approved or whatever the process is. And the AI kind of handles the mechanics of the data entry and things like that, which we really see as a great way of gaining efficiency across state government. So that's one of the big things we're working on right now. And that's called the Model Context Protocol, if you feel like Googling Tastic stuff later. We also have developed a lot of partnerships across states and across nonprofits. So the map there in the lower left, I put together last year. We've actually had some updates to it. I've now been talking with California, and West Virginia has adopted a bunch of our model as well. But the states in green are states that are kind of adopting some large part of Vermont's approach to AI, either the structure of our AI council, our code of ethics, or both, because Vermont was actually the first state to release a code of ethics. So lots of other states have copied that and adopted it. And then also we're having conversations with counties and towns and cities across the country, but especially in Vermont, about how they can adopt AI within their government. And then we're working with a number of nonprofits. I put some of the highlights there. I'm really excited about the work of AI Vermont, which is training Vermont educators in how to use AI in their classroom or in administration within schools. We work with them quite closely. And then also the Center for Civic Futures, which is focused on AI across the human services sector at the state and federal level. And their CEO is actually based here in Vermont. So we spend a lot of time with them as well. Before we go to looking forward, any questions so far? I know we just kind of did a speed run through what we've been working on, but any questions?
Seems like we don't have any questions yet.
All right, we'll keep rolling. Back to you, Susanna.
All right. So some of the things that the council is looking at going forward, one of them is making sure that we continue to monitor the processes that are AI enabled. We want to make sure that just because we've set something into motion, that it's headed in the correct direction. And when it comes to machines and when it comes to the robots, we've seen enough science fiction to recognize that things can go sideways really quickly. And we want to make sure that we are not caught creating unintended harmful consequences for anybody. So we want to make sure that we're expanding that outcome monitoring, keeping an eye on things. We want to look at readying the workforce in Vermont to participate in what's being commonly referred to as the new AI sector of the economy. So what that means is not just making sure that state government employees are versed in how to use it, what are the best tools to use and how it can be used in their work, but also looking at the workforce more broadly, people who are looking to enter state service or people who may not be in state service, but to the extent that this council influences decisions that get made outside of state government, we want to make sure that the workforce is prepared for the role that AI is going to end up playing, regardless of where each of us is on the AI skepticism spectrum. And for transparency, will say I am usually one of the people wanting to pump the brakes. And we have others on the council who are really enthusiastic and want to see more expansion. And so having that balance, I think, is important, so that we know not just what we're capable of, but also what the risks are. So having that broad spectrum of perspectives is important. And then we have a couple of legislative items that we think would be of interest to you. I'm going to ask Josiah to mention those.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Up here, you'll see deepfakes. We've been following along with some work New Jersey has been doing around, basically they updated their computer crimes code to talk about if someone creates a deepfake with the intent of committing some other crime or with the intent of harassing or bullying or things like that, that is a crime. And that covers a swath of AI-related harms that aren't currently covered well under Vermont statute. So we updated the revenge pornography statute, I think last session at some point. And then, however, we think that there's more around election interference, around and around just general bullying and fraudulent impersonation of varying kinds using AI that are worth spending some time on. So New Jersey's law we've been looking at, and there are a number of others in flight in other states.
Just, does that happen on this committee run? Like GovOps committee, like updating these?
I'm not sure which committee would have jurisdiction on that. Looking at Jake.
Various or?
It might be GovOps.
Another thing that we've identified is AI allows much more robust re-identification of things that we make available as public records. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for new AI-related risks, both to privacy and also to cybersecurity in the materials we make available publicly, where people can be using AI to kind of tie things together more robustly and get additional information than what we intended to release in those public records. Does that make sense? Okay. The third thing that I didn't put on the slide, but would love for you all to consider is, as Susanna just mentioned, there's an opportunity for developing an AI sector of Vermont's economy. We already have several businesses working in this space. We have a pretty robust advanced manufacturing economy here as well. And we think that there's opportunity to kind of leverage the work that we are already doing, training our in-state workforce who state employees we train are not always Vermont state employees, right? Sometimes they go back to private sector at some point. And so we've actually, by training state employees, helped to train Vermont's workforce. The work that we're working on with AI Vermont, the collaborations we have with the universities and colleges around Vermont, around their AI curriculum, we have an opportunity to really develop Vermont's AI sector of the economy. And so would love collaboration, thinking through what that can look like and how we can facilitate that.
I'm not sure. Can you guys see my hand? I think probably not.
I can see it now. So Rep. James, you'll go first and then Rep. Sibilia.
Right. Just a question about the deep fake, some of your legislative priorities. We do have a bill, it's a pretty narrow bill, S23, that deals with synthetic media in elections.
Yep.
That is sitting, I think the House passed it during the veto session maybe, and so I assume it's heading back to the Senate to reconcile differences, hopefully early in January. But I'd be curious to get your, just as a follow-up, you don't have to, say it now. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but about that bill. And then I would love to see model legislation or any resources from New Jersey and other states that are leading in a broader way on this issue?
Yeah, we can send that over as follow-up. I think what I appreciated about New Jersey's approach was it covered election interference. It also covers any other thing that's a crime, which I think is a nice way of tying off some of the other harms that AI can impact.
Thanks.
So my question is, around the last bullet on here, does the legislature see the AI council having a regulatory role in the future? Which is a little different, I think, than what I was hearing you say around workforce
I didn't
development.
cover that part yet, but yes.
And I'll wait until you.
Yeah, so I guess just to summarize that, there were a couple of bills. I think Representative Priestley, you introduced a couple of AI regulatory bills last session, and there's discussion in other states. And one of the things we spent some time on this past year with the AI Council was, well, what would it look like to do AI regulation? What would we need? How would that be different from the work that we're doing today? And in the current federal environment, AI regulation is particularly fraught. We're trying to not, preclude the state from participating in AI money available from the feds if we can avoid it. But there are, we wanted to get a read from legislature, and I recognize that's probably not the six of you in this room right now, necessarily just you, but just get a read from you all on, what should we be thinking about? How should we be preparing the council for the next generation of our work? Workforce development, we think, is a thing that we can easily participate in, and with some minor changes to the composition of the council really have a big impact on. But the regulation piece would require, a bit of a different focus than what we're working on so far. And we want to make sure that we're prepared for whatever you all have envisioned for us in that space.
So I'm sorry to say I don't think I've read that usually on this. But can you give me an example in state government now that could be similar to the AI Council having a regulatory role?
Yeah, so there's a couple. I think there was some discussion last session of risk assessments being submitted to some body within the state and maintained. And Representative Priestley, please do feel free to chime in on detail on any of this. But like things like that, where some of it is maybe a little bit more like what Secretary of State does, more of a ministerial function of taking in materials and compliance type materials about, are people actually doing risk assessments? Are they ensuring that harms are being adequately mitigated? Things like that. Another piece would be
OPR.
Yeah, a bit like OPR.
Okay.
So that would be a model. California is, of course, doing a California flavored thing, but kind of a much heavier regulatory component. I don't think that's where we want to jump to in Vermont at this point. But, there's kind of a spectrum of administrative up through regulatory things that are happening in various states in this space. And we would love guidance on where you see Vermont landing in that, and if there's work that we should be preparing to do.
So we are at the 3 o'clock time. We've only allotted a half an hour. Do we have time to keep going, or are you going to take the entire?
Oh, I'll take more than.
Okay.
So I would be welcome to come back. So.
Well, I think we might
Continue your talk.
have different folks back, but are we almost at the?
Yeah, this is the end of it right here. So, Susanna, you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, actually, I think our conversation we just had now is a great segue, because whether you see the council as having a regulatory function or continuing its current work, either way, I think that there are ways that we can make the council and its work stronger and more accountable to impacted communities. And these days, everyone is an impacted community when it comes to something like AI, but we want to make sure that we're putting the focus on things and people who are particularly in focus. So one of the things that we are asking the legislature to consider is additional members for the council.
Hold on.
Particularly
Got it.
particularly
Thank you.
those who can support the workforce focus. So for example, having a rep from AOE, the Agency of Education, or from VDOL, the Vermont Department of Labor. We've also been kicking around, are there HR professionals perhaps who may also be able to participate in that? So having additional members, particularly those who can support the workforce focus, having an extended mission, that is to say, not sunsetting us. We're thinking either auto-renewing or perhaps at least something that would go until 2030, which gives us a really solid foundation upon which do some deep planning and start thinking about the out years and knowing that there's some stability in terms of what the council can offer to the state as these technological advances happen quicker and quicker. Another huge part of what we'd like to do is increase our level of public engagement. And those of you who've heard anyone from ORE say anything in public before, you're not surprised to hear this one. It's tremendously important that we hear from people, and not just in a performative and consultative sense, but really in a sense that helps to feed and share power when we can. And I think that dovetails with a part of the conversation we just had around legislation, because just as an example, when we think about enhancing criminal penalties for something, well, we know that a lot of the statutes and regulations in our criminal justice system can sometimes be biased. So how are we able to incorporate AI in a way that protects people and also doesn't further disparities that may already exist in a justice system that we're now throwing AI into? So really being able to hear from our partners who may not be in government and who are in community is tremendously important. And so regardless of our membership, we want to be able to pull more people in who can speak to those real things. And then, of course, guidance on the future of the council and the division itself. We would love to know from you all, what are you thinking? How do you envision there being a synergy between the council and other parts of government? We certainly have ideas, but I think that one of the things that would be helpful to us is an understanding that you all are feeling as ready as we are to expand our focus and to create something that feels sustainable in the long term. I'll leave it at that. Josiah, if I missed anything, please jump in. But I thank you all for the added time.
Currently, the council is set to sunset in 27. So that's the context of let's extend it to 2030 or set it to auto renewing for a while.
Great. Thank you very much. Pretty quickly through that, I realized that half an hour is not enough time to talk about this. So we might be reaching out again on this. So with that, I guess we'll move into cybersecurity.
Oh, fun stuff.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. For the record, Sean Naylor, ANC Digital Services. Some of you may recognize him, some of you may not. I was Secretary and CIO prior to Secretary Riley Hughes and was Deputy Secretary for 5 years under Secretary Quinn. So I have a little bit of background, retired, came back into capacity to help on some public-facing cybersecurity programs, specifically the Cybersecurity Advisory Council. It was something I worked on that session, my last session to get through that established this. And so I was excited to come back and give some assistance there and provide you an update today. So John Kelly is going to present the deck because I did not have the Zoom info on my laptop. Should I Josiah present for me? He was good at it. But I assume everyone got the presentation, the handouts from. So we're almost there. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, we're going to just kind of recap quickly. In statute, the mission was to evaluate the cyber readiness of critical infrastructure operators within Vermont, develop a strategic plan that improves the cyber readiness of those operators, review cyber standards and protocols as they relate to the critical infrastructure sectors, and to build relationships among all organizations that have an interest in critical infrastructure, cybersecurity, including federal colleges and universities. We have also, I will say, added some functions as a result of federal executive orders, specifically the executive order signed by President Trump on March 19th, 2025, achieving efficiency through state and local preparedness. This executive order, in essence, was pushing Department of Homeland Security to have certain functions that had been with CISA, FEMA, and make those responsibilities more state centric. And so we utilized the council to kind of help understand what types of resources organizations within Vermont, specifically in the critical infrastructure space, utilized that were federal in nature. And so that was an additional mission that we've utilized this existing council for.
Is there a cost estimate associated with that?
There isn't at this point because it's kind of all over the place and it's a sample. Also, at this point, the federal government, many of the things like the vulnerabilities database, that is the CVE vulnerabilities database that the CISA maintains, they stopped it for, I think, about 24 hours. And the feedback was such that they kept maintaining it. So that vulnerabilities database lets people know that, say, an integrated, an IoT device, Internet of Things, right? Something in your home that maintains your temperature and can turn your lights on and everything else. That database keeps track of devices that have vulnerabilities, software that has vulnerabilities, stuff like that. So they've continued that. So we have not seen any direct results. So we've gotten no farther than just kind of taking that initial sampling of what kind of resources are utilized. All right, next slide. I'm going to get sore neck for us. Oh, okay. The board or the commission, the council as established in legislature is comprised of a mix of state and private sector representatives. Representatives include those from Burlington Electric Department, Champlain Water District, UVM Health Network, Vermont Gas, Vermont Information Technology leaders. And then as you can see, the CIO and the Chief Information Security Officer from ADS, the Emergency Management Director, the Homeland Security designee, the Adjutant General, and the Attorney General. And then there are other support staff involved like myself in supporting the council. We're going to dive a little bit into accomplishments that we've had over the course of the 2 years that I've returned.
Sorry, Secretary Neal, just going backwards.
Yes.
So on the council, I believe we introduced legislation that just put a legislative member on, which did not end up passed without a legislative member on.
Your recollection is correct. Yes, that was debated and was in a couple of iterations of the bill, but the final one that was passed by both the House and Senate did not include representatives. I think it had one from the House and one from the Senate actually originally, and those were excluded in the final bill.
Do you know why?
I was not privy to those conversations. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
So the accomplishments. So we started, I returned in January 2024 and started organizing it. We had to do our first report. So there hadn't been a whole lot of activity because most of state government was focused on recovering from a flood and it was July 10th of 2023. That initial report was primarily that the council had formed membership of the council and we were statutorily required to review the definition of essential supply chain. So the state of Vermont or the legislature during that process also revised kind of the definition of critical infrastructure and essential supply chain to include things like food, heating oil, we're a couple of years out from the pandemic or not even out, PPE, items like that. So Those are not necessarily at the federal level, what is in definition of critical infrastructure sectors, but in Vermont, they were added in. So we did, the council had done a review and there were no recommended changes. As it was written at that time, seemed appropriate for the inclusion of intended audiences. We then set about doing a survey of critical infrastructure operators within Vermont. This was, I will say, a challenge because one is you want people to be honest. And two, you want to collect meaningful data without holding data that then puts anybody at compromise because the information you hold is a risk, right, if it falls in the wrong hands. So what we ended up doing is going down the path of developing about a 40-question survey that we administered anonymously that more measured cybersecurity maturity than any technical aspects about anybody's cybersecurity capability, right? So we wanted to know, do you have strong policies? Do you have, documentation in a break glass moment of how to respond to something? Do you have trusted vendors on, contract? Do you do any kind of exercising to make sure, can you recover from a serious event within a certain time window? So we tried to measure maturity. We didn't ask for things like, what do you use to defend your desktops? Or how do you ensure, right? There was no technical components to it. We spent the summer of 24 and for the most part, distributing and getting that survey completed. We had 119 partial responses and 77 complete responses, which we felt was good because most sectors, there was a sampling from each one. So we had a pretty good representation from electric and hospitals and water and wastewater and, local government and all of those entities. And so we had enough to go on that it gave us that idea of what the state of things were out there. And pretty much the takeaways were that we in Vermont, regardless of sector, there are haves, have-nots, and somewhere in between, to just really sum it up. There are organizations that are large and they have dedicated resources and they have cybersecurity programs, they have staff dedicated to it, and they are moving forward and can be a model in some areas. And we have areas that still have a physical security mindset where they think about, why would anybody care about attacking this little entity in remote Vermont, not realizing that there's just another IP address on the internet and they don't know where you're sitting. You're just as vulnerable as anyone else. And then we had quite a few that fell in between, right? That they recognized the need, may have started some things, but a lot of in progress, planning type responses where they know they need to do something, but they either lack the resources or the attention to make progress on it. So those kind of three categories, right? Three broad categories of folks is what drove us to my notes here. Develop in our 2025 annual report, we included also the very first strategic plan as a result of the council's survey and work understanding kind of the state of things out there. In addition to the strategic plan in the 2025 report, we also had a recommendation to the legislature around the composition of the council and membership. If you recall, maybe John, if it'd be all right, if you go back to the third slide with the members. We have representatives from electric, water, health. Vermont Gas is there as a result of the Vermont Business Roundtable, so they're supposed to represent essential supply chain. And then Vital is really, French Technology Leaders is the Health Information Exchange for Vermont, so they're just a subset of health data and really kind of roll up under there. But there are 17 critical infrastructure sectors as recognized at the federal level, right? We don't have representation from telecom. We don't have representation from internet service providers. We do not have representation from cellular. We do not have representation from education. We do not have representation from local government. So that's something that I think in the long term, we're going to need to address in order to have a more well-rounded representation and kind of input in how the council works and drives forward some of the projects we're going to talk about in a minute. The other thing I would say that because in statute, it designated certain organizations to name people representatives to the council, right? So like the Vermont Business Roundtable was there for essential supply chain. Oh, did away with it. It is heavy on large organizations in Chittenden County,
I noticed that.
right? Vital being the only one that's based in Montpelier. And so that they are organizations that do cyber well. Right, so we're lacking the voice of the organizations that are struggling with cybersecurity. It's competing, right? Maybe a small municipality where it's competing with culvert replacements as a result of the most recent flooding, or it's competing with, other demands of trying to retain school bus drivers in a school district because, everything else is demanding funds. So we're missing other sectors and we're missing, I think some of that rural Vermont or areas that are at least represent organizations that are not as mature from a cyber perspective. These folks bring that, this is how to do it, right? They have the experience. These voices are important to have because they can lead by example in certain situations, right? And they can be behavior that others can model, but we also need that lesser voice. Thank you, JK. We're going to go back. So the goals and objectives that as laid out in the strategic plan, increase awareness of cybersecurity risks to critical infrastructure operators and municipalities, improve critical infrastructure operators and municipalities cyber preparedness, build relationships and establish a Vermont community of organizations working cooperatively for better cyber information sharing. We want to have a standardized Vermont-centric incident response plan. So if an organization doesn't have an incident response plan, that's the thing that the moment you realize you've been compromised, that's the break glass moment, you pull it out and you start following it. There are plenty of templates out there, but they don't represent what are your obligations for reporting to maybe the attorney generals, depending on the type of breach you have. What are resources that are available to you, like maybe through Vermont Emergency Management, if you're a large organization and need resources to help because you're a mid-sized municipality whose water system was just compromised and you got to figure out how to get tens of thousands of gallons of water to key locations in order to distribute to your citizens while restoration is happening on the cyber event, right? So we want to make it so that organizations that don't have, and even those that have started, have at least supplemental information that makes it, as localizes it, right? And makes it Vermont-centric so it's more meaningful to them than some generic thing from a vendor or off the internet. And then the last is what we ultimately want, right, is continuous improvement. This is the bad guys are not going to go away in the foreseeable future. It's not going to get easier. They're not going to get more lax. They're not going to get dumber, right? So in order for us there is no stopping. It's getting to a threshold, taking a breath, and then continuous improvement and getting to the next threshold of preparedness and ability to respond. So with that, we're going to talk about the strategies that support those objectives. So what's laid down there, these are just the high level sections. There's more detail in the report. Outreach and awareness, a building strong partnership strategy, multiple tiers of support. We'll get into that in a minute. That's the bread and butter of what we've identified as what will really make a difference here in Vermont. The universal incident response plan template that we just spoke of, and the community approach. The community approach is something we started right from the beginning. As soon as I started back, it's like talking to Norwich and Champlain College, talking to New Harbor, a large organization based in Vermont that is cybersecurity experts, talking to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, going to events, talking to things like Vermont Rural Water Association. They're bringing all these organizations that represent or have an interest in in their partners, ensuring that they have a cyber readiness and bringing them in and including them, and also others in the state government, right? So we've been talking to the Department of Public Service and Public Utility Commission and Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Environmental Conservation, the folks that regulate the water and wastewater, so that they're all read in on what we're doing. They're supportive of it and understand that it's going to benefit their constituents down the road. In addition to those strategies in the strategic plan, the council also, during the last session, felt compelled to write a letter of support to the legislature around a budget request that was included in the Department of Public Safety's budget last year. And so in a parallel effort, I'm going to try not talk in acronyms. I've tried to be good so far. There is a program called the State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program. This is a federal program that came out of the, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, the federal post-pandemic investment program, where monies were set aside for a 4-year grant cycle where states were recipients of those monies, but they had to pass through 80% of the money to the local municipalities for cybersecurity improvements. Vermont is in year one of that. Year two, we had a waiver for the 10% year match. Year two is a 20% match. We did not have a waiver for it. So we needed some state funds to match in order to optimize that. That letter of support was submitted to support that it was a $600,000 request. It survived. So we thank the legislature for doing that, because now that allows us to work from the top of my head around 2.3 million in federal monies. So in aggregate, we'll have about $3 million to work with out of that grant program to help local municipalities improve their cyber preparedness. And you're saying, why does that matter? You're focused on critical infrastructure. Well, one of the things that it kind of has been come to light that many of the critical infrastructure operators are local entities. They could be a fire district runs a water system. It's the local municipality that runs, they run power, they run phone. There's local municipalities that run wastewater, water. So those would all be eligible. So we have this, we're now looking and kind of like converging, right? The funding stream that's coming from the federal effort, the work from the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, so that we're going to be surgical in our investment, right? So that we know that we can benefit both by spending a dollar once, right? So if we use that federal grant money and the state match money, we can improve not only the municipalities as a result, but we can also improve their critical infrastructure operations that rely on technology. I'm going to pause because I think I've talked nonstop. I need to take a breath. See if there's any questions before we jump into like, this is the past, now where we're going.
Like we don't have any questions yet.
Excellent. So next steps. We're focusing on the 3 R's, right? We're trying to as much understand that there's a marketing piece to this that need to get folks to realize that it's important to everyone, right? So simplifying it as not talking in tech speak, not trying to overwhelm people with what it is, but 3 R's, right? You got to focus from a technology perspective on resilience, response, and recovery. But it all rolls up to those 3 things, right? So that's something that people can just get a quick understanding on. How are we going to do that, right? So this is an interesting one. So we're going to use, in many industries, there are already standards adopted. The power grid, there are national standards around cybersecurity expectations. There is no need for Vermont to create its own standards or anything else when there are strong ones that have been developed and adopted across the industry. But there are some areas where, I'll just say the standards may not be as well developed, as mature, or utilized as well. And so we landed on, there is the Center for Internet Security. And they have a series of controls. And so we're going to use that as the basis. So think of this as, I don't know, there's like, say, 200 controls. Sounds overwhelming. But interestingly, they've taken their controls and they've tiered them on like, boy, if you've got nothing, do these first 40. If you got something, you want to build upon it, do the next 100, right? And then when you really get mature, do the last 60. That's right. And so it mirrors kind of the categories of what the organizations in Vermont tend to be as far as maturity, low, medium, and high. And so that's a nice match. But what we're doing is we're taking, this is where the expanded membership of the council will be beneficial long-term. The council members now are starting sector-specific groups. So they're reaching out to their peers. I think next week we have a meeting for the water sector. I'll be helping the representative organize that meeting. But they're now kind of like sit down with a representation of their peers, like a sub-working group, and start saying, okay, if we take all these controls, we don't, another sector is finance, right? Payment processing, financial controls are going to be way more important to a financial institution and maybe secondary to a fire district where they need to worry about operational controls, right? So can somebody remotely take over putting extra fluoride in the water without anybody sensing it type thing? So they have different priorities, right, for making sure that their cyber resilience improves, different focus areas to start. They all want to be at the same level, but you prioritize different things depending on your industry. So those sector specific groups are what's developing that. So you will have like a playbook and say, okay, we've not done anything. My peers say I should probably start. This is the number one thing I should do. This gives me the most bang for the buck based on Vermont, local law, risk, and expediency to accomplish it and have a positive outcome for my environment. And so that's where we're kind of working now, is developing those sector-centric playbooks for different organizations. And then I talked about how in the strategic plan, number 3 was the meat of it, right? And then we're looking at developing services, and we're going to get into that in the next slide, that support that. And then in the response and recovery, we're doing a couple of different things here. One of the things that I've heard, like I went last year to the town fair, right? So I think it was at Killington, and I got to do a little presentation, talk about what we're doing. And one of the things that I heard was like, they often just don't know where to turn. They're like, well, what's a trusted source? Well, the state of Vermont expends a lot of effort to ensure that we have technology vendors that are pre-vetted, agree to our terms and conditions, meet our criteria, and then they sit in what we call a retainer pool for us to use whenever we need something quick. We've worked with our procurement office. That retainer pool will be extended so that municipalities can do it. So we'll start making available contracts that the state of Vermont owns, would say like a cybersecurity response organization, to municipalities. So if a municipality gets hit, they're not sitting there trying to figure out who they should call. They can just like send an email to one of, a couple of these and see who can respond the quickest and engage somebody. The contracts are already in place. These are just like simple scopes of work for work to be done under them. So that's a good opportunity.
I know we're nearing time and this is very dense and I appreciate it. Is that, have you talked about that being accessible to really all size municipalities? Because, we have a lot of municipalities that are basically run by volunteers.
Yep. So there are no structural limitations, but it's like a day forward thing that the chief procurement officer is working on. So there's not a lot of contracts available yet, but once we hit a critical mass, then we recognize we're going to have to do, and we've already talked to the League of Cities and Towns, right, about putting together like a how-to video, right? It's like, hey, here's a new resource video for you. Sit down, watch the video, so you know, at least in the back of your head, you've heard about it, and when it comes time. And so we recognize there's gonna have to be a lot of material that will help assist people to even find that, but at least the contracts will be there for them to utilize in that event. And then the other is that, actually, I think we have a meeting also next week, Tuesday maybe, where we're starting to sit down with emergency management and we're talking to them about how does cyber become a planned response event for them that we can start talking about, because a lot of people have tried to distinguish that, well, cyber events are different than weather events. They're different from a physical security event, right? But when it comes to critical infrastructure, at the end of the day, if a large utility loses its ability to transmit power to citizens of Vermont, does it matter whether the outage was weather related or cyber related? No. The end result is that you've got to restore services. You've got to, include the right people. And so we're starting to how does cyber start to become one of the things that they train for, plan for? And again, once we know what that is, that's something that we can share with the organization so that they know how to engage those state resources. Because often, right, there's this stigma. If you have a cyber event, you have a data breach, everybody wants to try and keep it close and solve it as quick as possible and hope that the media doesn't find out. But the problem is that usually means for a protracted event, because very few organizations have the resources to truly respond to a large cyber event timely. So that's another piece we're working on. I'm sorry, we are over by 3 minutes and I have a couple more slides. I don't know if you want to continue. If you have the opportunity, I have probably 5 minutes.
Let's do another 5 minutes.
So the meat of it is coming down to, we've identified really four projects that we're talking about, but we really want to grow them into long-term programs and service offerings. And that's an education and planning, right? Just giving people the basics, letting them know why they need to worry about it, and then putting free tools in front of them so they can start educating themselves, reading in on it. We've actually worked with a nonprofit organization called the Cyber Readiness Institute. If anybody is interested in learning more, look them up. They have a very good no-cost program that allows folks to get the basics of cybersecurity for their organization and develop their own playbook. So number 2 is a risk management project. So that first one is for those entry-level folks, right, that don't even think that they need to worry about cyber because they're sitting in a remote spot. Number 2 is for that tier that really knows they need to do something, but they've lacked the resources, whether those resources are financial or technical, to make progress. And so this is about, we've already talked about it. We've got the skeleton of a program from both Norwich and Champlain and also the League of Cities and Towns where they can deliver risk assessment and mitigation assistance. So think about it as a very low-cost opportunity utilizing cybersecurity students at either Champlain, Norwich, or a professional that is part of the League of Cities and Towns organization. Come in and do an assessment and give you your biggest pain points. But one of the things that we are budgeting for and planning as part of this is the team that does that stays engaged for 12 months to help that organization mitigate their biggest risks, right? To have an ear to go to and say, okay, well, we took care of number 1. We have no idea where to start on number 2. Okay, well, let's sit down with you and figure out what that means for you. And so that's a continuous resource that will be available to them to work through their biggest vulnerabilities. The third project is information sharing and collaboration. So this is on the left to right, my left to right, maturity, right? Where if you're entering in is on this side and right is those organizations that do cybersecurity, have a cybersecurity program. What we're talking about is true collaboration and information sharing. So there is technology that we utilize at the state of Vermont, right, that is called a SOC, a Security Operations Center. Well, our SOC runs independent of anybody else's. But I believe the UVM Health Network has one. Vermont Electric Company has one. So what we're talking about is a way to break down and share information across the SOC so that if we can triangulate activity that shows, hey, there's some risky activity over here. Are you folks seeing anything? Well, what's it look like? Well, we have the means in place that we can share it across. We're seeing the same things. Okay, what does that mean? We have our collective knowledge will be greater than any one organization's ability will ever be singularly. So how do we start to share that information in a safe, secure environment? So that's what that program is striving to do. And then the last one is an infrastructure modernization. We recognize that my favorite example is there is probably someone's water system out there that has a Windows 95 PC on it controlling some controller, right? And the limiting factor is not the technical capabilities of the staff, the network, or anything else, but that physical piece of infrastructure. So we recognize that there are going to be times where the infrastructure is the limitation. We need to have a means to help organizations modernize that hardware part of it. And where we can, migrate them to a cloud environment so that it is a shift from like having to make routine investments, right? Every 4 or 5 years, keep something modern. Whereas if you get it on the cloud, somebody's taking care of that for you and you have this more of a subscription model that you pay for. And it's a lot easier to digest, especially for like local government where, you know, just ups and downs in budgets for things that should be able to be managed consistently is to their benefit. And the last slide, if you want additional information, all our meetings are public and are recorded. If you go to there, you'll find all the recordings all the way back to the beginning, our reports, our anything that we've submitted to the legislature. We also do, I tap on young Josiah Raish. He provides me tools that do like AI analysis of the meetings, the YouTube videos. So there's even brief recaps there. So if you don't want to listen to me rambling for 90 minutes, you can get like 10 bullets that give you the highlights. And that is all I had to present for today.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? It's been a long day. I imagine probably no more questions, but thank you very much.
If you want me back, I'll come at the beginning of the day so you can refresh.
Well, I think there'll be longer sessions and more breaks. Promise that. And I think our next meeting is October 21st. And it'll be starting a bit later than 9:30. So with that, I think we can adjourn for the day.
Thank you.